You know, every now and then, a single headline pops up that just peels back the curtain on how an entire country really works. And that's exactly what just happened in Thailand. The government suddenly dissolved parliament. And we're going to dive into this because what looks like a simple political shuffle is actually a masterclass in a hidden power structure, one that dictates pretty much everything.
So on December 11th, Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul makes the big announcement. And the reason he gave, oh, it's a classic. A noble gesture, right? To return power to the people, let them decide the country's future. It sounds good, democratic, even admirable.
But here's the question we have to ask. Was it really about giving power back to the people, or was something else entirely going on behind the scenes? Well, if you dig a little deeper, it turns out this probably wasn't some grand democratic gesture. It was the final move in a game where the prime minister had simply run out of options.
So what really happened? The real trigger, it turns out, was a failed constitutional amendment. You see, this amendment was basically the last thread holding the prime minister's minority government together, and when lawmakers shot it down, well, that last pillar of support just crumbled. And with that support gone, a no-confidence vote was just around the corner, and it was one he was absolutely guaranteed to lose. So here's the key thing to understand. Dissolving parliament wasn't about empowering voters. It was a tactical retreat. See, in this system, choosing to dissolve is like hitting a controlled reset button. Getting voted out in a no-confidence motion, that's a humiliating public defeat. He just chose the lesser of two evils. This whole episode actually reveals this really fascinating concept that explains so much about modern Thai politics. It's the idea of the equilibrium prime minister. And it's not about who wins an election, it's about who can keep the peace. So think of it this way. An equilibrium prime minister isn't necessarily the person who gets the most votes. No, they're the one who can act like a master juggler, keeping a whole set of powerful, often unelected groups happy. Their power doesn't really come from the ballot box. It comes from the tolerance of these key institutions. The moment you lose that tolerance, you lose everything. Okay, so who exactly are we talking about here? Who are these powerful groups, the ones who really pull the strings, the ones an equilibrium prime minister has to keep happy just to survive? Well, let's call them the veto players. And just look at who's on this list. You've got the monarchy setting the national tone, the powerful army in charge of security, the interior ministry with its massive bureaucracy stretching into every corner of the country. Then you have these old, powerful provincial political families who deliver the votes. And of course, a parliament that's so fragmented it can block just about anything. Prime Minister Anutin's job was to balance all of them. His government fell because that tightrope act finally became impossible. Okay, but here's where this whole thing gets really interesting. Because this internal power game, it doesn't just stay inside Thailand's borders. Nope. It directly shapes the country's foreign policy. And the relationship with Cambodia is the perfect example of how this plays out in the real world. This right here, this shows you the incredible bind any Thai leader finds themselves in. It's like they're walking a tightrope. On one side, you have what's called the rhetorical floor. That's the pressure from the monarchy and the army to talk tough, to be strong on national sovereignty. If you look weak on the border, you pay for it immediately at home. But on the other side, you have the operational ceiling. Local business leaders, the provincial elites, they need that cross-border trade to make a living. And honestly, even the army doesn't want a real messy conflict. So leaders are just trapped between these two powerful forces. So what happens when you're stuck in that trap? Well, you get this super predictable four-step dance. First, you get really strong nationalistic public statements. That satisfies the tough talk crowd. Second, you might see some small, very controlled military operations, just to show you're serious. Third, you go through the motions of diplomacy. And fourth, and this is the kicker, you make no real public concessions. It's a cycle driven entirely by the need to survive at home. But here's the thing. While this all makes perfect sense if you're inside Thailand, from the outside, it looks completely different. And this is where a really dangerous misunderstanding can start to grow, especially for a neighbor like Cambodia. Think about it. Cambodia looks across the border. They hear all this tough talk. They see these military moves. And what do they think? They think it's a genuine threat. They take it at face value. So, in response, they adopt this strategy of constrained deterrence, using international law, using bodies like ASEAN to try and box Thailand in. They're reacting to what they see, not the complicated political machine that's actually driving it all. And this brings us to what might be the most critical warning in all of this. The biggest risk here isn't that one side is going to wake up one day and decide to start a war. No.
The real danger is an accident, a crisis that spirals out of control because each side fundamentally misunderstands why the other is doing what it's doing. It's a misinterpretation that's literally baked into the system. So, let's tie this all together and go back to where we started. That sudden collapse of Prime Minister Anutin's government, it wasn't just another day of political drama. It was a moment where everything became crystal clear. When the government fell, it didn't actually change this underlying system of power. It just ripped the curtain away so we could all see how it really works. And now, Thailand enters what's called a caretaker period until the next election, which basically means the government has even less power and those veto players have even more control. Any real policy decisions are pretty much frozen. And that's really the bottom line here. What we see from the outside as Thailand's foreign policy choices, often they're not choices at all. They're just the external symptoms of a constant, high-stakes, internal game of political survival. The country's actions are dictated by the desperate need to keep that delicate balance at home. Which leaves us with this one last big question to think about. If a political system is so completely built around just maintaining an internal balance around its own survival, does it ever lose the ability to make a genuine strategic choice on the world stage? It's a question that goes way beyond just Thailand, and it's definitely something worth mulling over.